Hello, everyone. You're very welcome to the Full Time Sports Network and the main night agenda for Rebels Fantasy Focus. We do have a slightly different agenda on the cards today, and that is going to be whether or not international football has seen its heyday and purported changes to football in England and the proposed scrapping of the EFL Cup. So do stay with us for this show. Lads, it's the Tuesday of the international break, and football, as we know it, has been disrupted. And today, for this rather different Rebel Fantasy Focus, I'm joined, of course, by Cullum and Ross. But before we say hello to the lads, we do want to give our regards to Pat Lawless, who is currently enjoying some margaritas in some unknown tropical island and didn't even have the courtesy to Skype in and show everyone just how much fun he is having. But, ladies and gentlemen, jokes aside, I do want to say hello to Colin and Ross and ask you how you're doing, gentlemen.
Hello, hello. How is everybody? All good this side? How you doing, Colin?
I'm doing fantastically well. Even more so that I know that I am also jetting off to a nice, wonderful, hot place in just a few days' time.
I don't see your leave request in the diary column. I think we're going to have to deny that. I'm sorry. Your missus can go on her own and take one of her friends. You're not allowed to leave. Sorry.
No. It's too late. Too late. Paid for. I'm going.
Yes. But lads and lassies, it's a rather different show for us this evening. We're going to be discussing matters that could alter the course of football as we know it in the Premier League. We're going to discuss from a multifaceted approach the future of international football, as it does seem that disgruntlement with international breaks is ever on the increase. And of course, it wouldn't be Rebels Fantasy Focus without some fantasy football talk. We will look at the Game Week 8 fixtures, how things worked out, and of course, yes, bat time with Vaughan, we will be talking about your oracle moment, the triple captain Son prediction that you made and rolled in like a freight train. But first, ladies and gentlemen, let's kick into the changes that are likely to be seen and discussed with regards to English football. And we do have a little bit of a snippet from the documents there that we will bring up for you. Here we go. So, I'm just going to knock off that banner just so that we can see everything. So, according to proposals to be presented under the umbrella of a new deal for football, this includes scrapping replays in the third and fourth rounds of the FA Cup, allowing clubs in Europe to opt out of Carabao Cup fixtures. Those clubs in Champions League, Europa League, and Europa Conference could either pull out from that tournament or send their under 21s instead. According to the Times, the FA and EFL are yet to be consulted, but the latter would welcome talks on the future of League Cup and FA Cup replays. The prospect of FA Cup replays being written out of the rulebook is described as inevitable, and it's the easiest way to free up some calendar space. Meanwhile, with the Carabao Cup seen as a money spinner for clubs in lower leagues, which has led to a compromised approach over the future of the tournament rather than attempting to scrap it completely. Now, this is obviously going to be a big debating issue with regards to fixture congestion. We aren't seeing it this year due to World Cup and international breaks. But how damaging for lower league clubs would the removal of the League Cup be? And let's just back it a little step further. Obviously, with the option of putting out the under 21s, just how much damage would that do? In essence, is that cancelling it by proxy? I'm going to come to you first, Ross.
Yeah, you make some good points there, Rebel, that I'm going to touch on. Firstly, let me just talk about the under-21's potential participation in the cup. We already have that. We have that in the Papa St. John's Trophy, where you get clubs that's been invited to let the under-21s participate in a league or in a league system with the cup and knockout rounds with lower league clubs. And having a Carabao Cup situation where clubs have find it optional to put their own under-21 squads again in those type of that type of cup, I think will damage the integrity of that. We always talk about the beauty of the cup competitions. We see it in the FA Cup, and we've seen it in the EFL Cup over the years. It's gone through many rebrandings over the decades, from the Coca-Cola Cup to the Capital One Cup and so forth. So I personally like the cup competition. I feel it showcases a lot of talent from lower league clubs. We always see them shine, and it's really, really good. It's great to have a midweek game, and the cup competition offers that type of opportunity to everybody, to the fans, to the players, and especially the fringe players that are fighting their way to try and make it back into the starting 11. So trying to take it out of the calendar year, I think will do more harm than good.
Colm, do you want to come in the back of that? Because obviously it's a cup that has been with us in competition for quite some time and has a lot of history to it. What are your sentiments with regards to these purported changes? Because obviously they're only at discussion stage at this point.
Yeah, I really don't want it to happen. My local team is a lower league team. Doncaster Rovers. I've been watching and going to Doncaster Rovers games for many, many years of my life, and I've had some of the best moments I've had is watching them in cup games. Sorry to bring it up, Ross, but years and years ago, we beat Man City on penalties. We knocked them out of the cup. We beat Aston Villa 3-0. We knocked them out of the cup. We drew Arsenal and then we got beat just, and then a couple of seasons later, we played again against Villa at the Keepmount Stadium, drew at our end. We managed to go to Villa's ground. It's a stadium where clubs like Doncaster Rovers and all the lower leagues clubs aren't going to see. Rovers drew against Arsenal at the Emirates. How many chances is that going to happen? It's not. Clubs like that aren't going to go into the heights of the Premiership because there's not enough money at that lower league level. So this is the only chance for the fans to see those kind of stadiums, really.
On the other side, though, there is another domestic cup, and if you're looking at the other major leagues as they are reported at the moment, the likes of Spain, Germany, Italy, they do have a single domestic cup. We have two currently running in tandem, the FA Cup and the League Cup. And if I'm not wrong, the FA Cup pretty much runs to the entire Football League as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I suppose in an era where fixture congestion and all these other types of issues are raising their eerie head, and with the likelihood that Champions League football is going to undergo a massive change and become an actual Super League-esque type structure, is it possible at this point that, unfortunately, the EFL Cup is literally on life support and holding on because of the fact that we have another domestic cup?
No, not at all. I scoff at that idea. I mean, this is what makes England such a great football country. It's why watching English football is the most entertaining type of football you can watch anywhere else in the world, due to the fact that they have these type of cup competitions within the countries. I mean, look at Spain, Italy, Germany. They all just become a dictatorship within those leagues because they've only got one cup system and one league, or one major league anyway. And scrapping the EFL Cup will be detrimental to clubs low down the league. Look, I know that the obvious point to that is money. All the clubs in the lower league will benefit from participating within any sort of cup competition, getting that little bit of revenue from making it into the next stage, or even from having gate ticket receipts. Of course, that's going to help them. So there's no need for me to point out and emphasize that type of obvious statements. But it's all the knock-on effects you have to think about that come with that. You think about youth players like under 17s, 18s, 19s getting blooded into a first team. They get those type of opportunities to come in. Fringe players, as I pointed out earlier as well. And it also gives managers time to play with new systems as well. I mean, we're talking about Doncaster Rovers there coming up against Villa, Man City, and the likes. And having a team in the Premier League trying something different against a lower league side and it might not work out also just contributes to the magic of the cup. It's beautiful. There's so much positives that come with this competition that taking it out might have an adverse effect on football as a whole within England.
Colm, at the risk of throwing a spanner in the works here, obviously the overriding sentiment really it appears to be that this cup needs to be retained. If it comes to a case of United or those European qualifying clubs playing out their Premier League 2 teams and keeping it, is that a more satisfactory outcome than them not participating at all?
I mean, there's ways to keep it going, and also, so it benefits the European competing teams. Maybe they'll look at it and go, right, okay, so we understand that you're focusing on your European games and everything, but still take part. Play some of your youth players, but you have to name 5 senior players within your team. Maybe it's somewhere down that, because like we're saying here with lower league fans, they want to see some of the big names. It doesn't have to be the full strength starting 11, that you see week in, week out playing in the Premier League, the Champions League, European League, etc., etc., etc. But make them turn. They might not even have to come on the pitch. Just be like, you have to name 5 of them within your either starting 11 or your subs, because that will still then give people what they want, really, won't it? They're still playing against the bigger teams, which is what every lower club wants. You ask any fan that, from Wrexham to Doncaster to, Rotherham to Salford City, all these teams, when these draws are happening, they're all looking for their ball and that Premiership team ball. That's what every single person wants.
And in a way, preferably, because obviously the higher attendance means obviously a larger cut than having that big team, even though there is obviously television money associated with it coming to them. Now, I'm going to come to the comments for the first time, but before I do start bringing a sprinkling of your thoughts to the panel, I want to know what you think with regards to the future of EFL Cup. Does it need to stay in its current format? Does it need to account for fixture burnout at this point? Or what is the absolute most positive result that can happen to sustain these competitions? But let's have a dip into the cup-related comments. There are quite a few that are stepping into those international fixtures. We will come to you after we discuss the opening topics on that. Matthew Bassett and and Gavin Ward are in the building. Gavin is saying he wishes you nothing but rain on your Holliers column. Matthew Bassett is saying hello to everyone on the show. We have Matt from Football United TV saying hello to all. Monday is saying, evening gents, loving the FPL brings enough talking points. And even today, we're going beyond the Call of Duty for you Monday. We're discussing the EFL Cup. We're going to be discussing international football. So strap in your seatbelt on Monday and keep giving us your thoughts, because I know you have a lot of opinions on a lot of matters related to football. Kalo saying, spare me the FPL. I want nothing to do with it for at least a week. Bad time with Vaughan. Yes, you can put on your crown. We do acknowledge you as the king at this point. But we will come to the significance of that comment a bit later on the show. Now, we are dipping into these comments. And Monday says, League Cup remains the lowest domestic cup. They need to revamp it somehow. Maybe Prem teams playing youth could be the way. So he's kind of saying, okay, maybe they do need to do something, because is it dying a death in its current format? the other one I'm going to give to you just before we go back to the next set is removing the League Cup would make the FA Cup as important as the league itself. Thoughts on that, lads, before we move forward on the comments?
It would. This, you can't really discuss it that much. I mean, it would, because there's in the leagues as such. Obviously, you know who the league. It's going to be your Man Cities. Your Liverpool. All these people are going to be fighting up there for the league. If they take out the League Cup, that means there's only one other cup for all these other teams, like your Villas, your Wolves, your West Hams. All these kind of teams. And maybe, shock. We've seen it a couple of times. Lower league teams have got quite far into the cups.
Portsmouth.
Portsmouth. Teams like this. If they take out the League Cup, then these teams, other teams, are going to be competing a lot harder for the FA Cup because it's the only other trophy that's out there. With the League Cup, it's the FA Cup that you tend to see the lower league teams progress a little bit more. There's been quite a few shock results in the FA Cup. The League Cup tends to be, okay, right, these have done quite well, but it gets to a certain point and then that's it. All the lower league teams are out. But I think the lower league teams will go out way, way, way sooner if the League Cup's gone and it's just the FA Cup.
The argument as well there, and that was raised by Ross, is that, of course, that the Football League does have what was the Johnson Payne Trophy. I'm not sure what its current. I can't remember what its current incarnation is called. But do they, in essence, some of them have 3 domestic cups that they have to navigate through, and then on top of that, the EFL has a far more congested league template to navigate through because they play an extra 10, 12 games in a season than the Premier League do in their domestic league alone.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a good point that you've raised there. And I've got a couple of different ideas actually how to make this a bit more easier and more enjoyable. And this is just me spitballing here. But before I do that, I just need to remind everybody another essence of importance that the EFL Cup possesses. And that's for the winners of the EFL Cup. I think now they're able to go into the playoffs of the Conference League, if I'm not mistaken, or the Europa League, one of the two. But I know that if a team has won that cup and they're not part of the top 7 in the top half of the Premier League, they are allowed to, or they gain access to go into the playoffs for Europe. And that's huge. As a Villa fan, I would love to win the EFL Cup and finish 14th or 15th, because that means that we have a chance to go into Europe and progress from there and everything else that comes with it, the money, the reputations, and so forth. So it's not to write the cup off and say it's a Mickey Mouse Cup, because it's not. It's not. For every other team that's out there in England, it shows an opportunity to progress as a club. But the idea that I have, and it's just to steal a little bit from Colm as well, I really, really like the point you made about having a maximum amount or minimum amount of senior players in the squad. That is a really good idea. And I think to add to that, maybe even change the seeding system. As far as I'm aware, any Premier League club that's not in Europe gets access into round 3. I think maybe change that to round 4 or even 5 somehow. And the reason I'm saying that is because it allows the lower league clubs an opportunity to gain, to progress higher up through the knockout stages. So you'll find more often than not, a team from the League 1 or League 2 might upset a championship club and gain access further or deep into the cup competition. And then they can face the seeded Premier League teams in the round of 16 or the 4th round or so, whatever else it is. I think that's a really, really smart way to play this if you want to make it more inclusive for different clubs, but also retaining the integrity of how important it is in the first place.
Some very interesting points there, Ross. Just kind of to go off that point, Gavin is telling us that unfortunately alterations to the EFL Cup would mean even less money for grassroots and smaller clubs at the end of the day. Now, while I can see getting those seedings and pushing the entry of those higher placed Premier League clubs down the tracks a bit, would make perfect sense in terms of preserving the competition being played, then obviously that does reduce the opportunity for someone, we'll say, the lower end of the league teams to draw a Tottenham, to draw a Manchester United, to make those big kind of attractive fixture draws. Now, I know you'd say Premier League is Premier League to some of these clubs, but obviously there is an extra body of money from getting a Premier League whale at your doorstep. So it would be interesting to see how this transpires. I'm just going to briefly go through the rest of the comments on this matter, because we do need to push on to the international football shortly. And Monday is saying, when was the last time a lower league team won either domestic cup? They were focused on the 46-game league by Prem teams playing youth. It could help lower teams. I think there is a championship club that won it within the last 20 years. Column, you might do a quick check for me on that. Kalo is saying, if League Cup wasn't as small as an ant, it would mean something. So basically he's arguing, does even winning an EFL Cup mean anything to your Wales in the Premier League? On Monday's also saying, doesn't Scotland have 2 domestic cups? But then Scotland is based on the English league system, so what is good enough for England is going to be clearly to be good enough for Scotland. Ireland does have 2 domestic cups as well, but does that make it the correct way to go about things is the real question. Not that there isn't other countries within the British Isles and Ireland doing it. There are, but the major leagues, your Germanys, your Spains, your Italys, are they doing it? Colin,
South Africa is.
South Africa?
Yep.
Colin, do you have anything for us there yet, or still searching?
I'm still searching at the moment.
No worries. We'll push on a few more comments. Gavin Ward is, I don't know, Monday. I remember the day that York City beat United and Everton, though. So, yes, there has been some wonderful scalps over the years. I think, did BBC in the last 3 or 4 years show the first non-league club making, was it the 3rd round or something along those lines? I think it was a rather momentous occasion anyway. Gavin, I think we lacked motivation with bigger things on the horizon. On Monday, I'm not going to take any excuses. United didn't beat the team that was put in front of them, so there's no hiding. You're 7'4", you can't hide behind the boxes and expect not to be seen. Anthony has a fantasy football question. I will hold on that. Kalo's talking about a new tournament, which was the original concept of the Celtic Nations Cup, which we'll be talking about. So we'll come back to that. Anthony Herbert is saying, I think they should keep the League Cup. Teams from 8th place down the Premier League and lower leagues should be in it. So he's basically saying, you finish in the top 8, you don't participate, which I'd imagine would come up with an element of opposition because of the fact that the financial benefit is so critical. Number one, to the sponsors that are attracted to putting their money into the cup and getting it seen. And number 2, to those smaller clubs who want the chance to play a whale. And finally, King's Football is saying, big up to the panel. Great topics on the schedule. How are we looking, Colm? Is it still?
Well, I remember Birmingham City won. Didn't they win the League Cup in about 2007? And I think they got relegated the same season or the league or season after. I do remember they did win it recently as well. And I'm not sure if Wigan were the team that won it and got relegated, or they won the FA Cup.
Yeah, Wigan won and got relegated. It was the FA Cup. They won and then they got relegated.
So the last team to win the FA Cup outside the top flight was in fact West Ham United way back in 1980. Yep. The only non-league team to have a win to win the FA Cup was Tottenham Hotspur in 1901.
Spurs non-league.
Yeah. So that since 1992, the inaugural league, no non-Premier League team has won the cup, and the League Cup, it does remain to be seen whether or not. I think it could have been a relegation year is the one that I'm thinking of, and I think it might have been Portsmouth, possibly. is the team in question, because I think they were in Europe in Championship at the time, which made for quite the anomaly.
Yeah,
But
2008. I remember that.
Birmingham won in 2011 or 2012, says Kalo. West Ham in 80 won the FA Cup, I think. On Monday, they're coming with his Quizmaster-esque type knowledge to the table. And yes, on Monday we are aware that they don't enter the early rounds, but they do still come into play in round 3. I think it's round 4 this year, actually, for Manchester United, if I'm not incorrect. But lads, final word on EFL Cup. Should it stay as it is? Does it need to change? And how does it become tenable going into the modern era of commercialised football? Ross first.
Yes, should stay, but I think that they need to work on it. Football's evolving, and we should evolve with it. Definitely should be changed somehow. I don't know how. My ideas are just spitballing, but there should be some sort of adjustments.
Colin?
Yeah, for the beauty of the game, the beauty of what is cup matches on cold Tuesday nights.
In Stoke,
it's got to, in Stoke, or even in Doncaster, as some Villa fans will quite rightly remember. It's got to stay, but I agree it does have to progress.
Thanks very much, Colin. Now, I do want to say at this point of the show, 10 wonderful people in the chat, and I hope you are enjoying this modified version of Rebels Fantasy Focus. If you have missed the discussion on the EFL Cup, please do feel free to give us your thoughts in the comments. We would love to share them on the channel. But that does lead us to asking, as the Bossman appears, if you do like what you see, please do like, share, and subscribe. We do appreciate it very much. But topic number 2, it is international football season. And I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but the shine does seem to be polished off by the reaction of people on social media to the presence of international football. And it does seem to be losing its shine, at least in the face of the unwashed masses. Now, we're going to be a bit more pragmatic on the show tonight. I think most of us will accept that there is a place for international football in the calendar. But let's have a look at it. Number 1, from the social media brigade. Number 2, from a club point of view. And number 3, from the player point of view, and what it means to them to don their jersey. But we'll start with the fans. I don't know about ye, but in your social circles, have you been hearing more and more, oh God, it's international football break, there's no sport to watch, blah, 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 blah. I know now, Ross, your fixture list for this international break is less than appetizing. Ireland have a Celtic derby with Scotland to look forward to. So there is going to be a bit of meat in the sandwich there on Saturday. And Colin, I think England have some rather juicy fixtures in themselves.
Yeah. So obviously England are playing Italy, and then I believe it's Germany as well. But my attention for international football is next to none. I do not care about the UEFA Nations League. The only competitions I care about are the Euros and the World Cup. I don't understand why we decide to have breaks in the middle of seasons to play friendlies, or this silly little UEFA Nations League that's randomly come out of nowhere because it's a good idea. No, it's not. You're disrupting everything, season out, season in, season out, season in. Why should domestic football be pushed to one side just so the UEFA Nations League can be played? So, I know, let's earn some more money. No, leave it alone. This is why there's fixture congestion, because they're coming up with silly, stupid little things like this and sticking it in the middle of a football season. Look, there's a couple of months where football's played and then there's an off season. If you want to do little things like that, do it in the off season. Don't do it in the middle of a season. It makes no sense because it can ruin teams. It can ruin domestic teams' seasons. If one of their players, for instance, let's say Tottenham Hotspur, for instance, or in fact, I'll be a bit more realistic. Let's say Erling Haaland is going on international duty and he gets a really bad injury and he's out for the rest of the season. What's that going to do for Manchester City? You know, you've seen his stats already this season. That's their biggest threat gone.
Absolutely.
I don't understand it at all. And it really does wind me up. It's just stupid.
No, a Monday is definitely seeing the same hymn sheet as you call them, but I'm going to throw in that grenade into the conversation. Obviously, prior to the unpopular Nations League fixtures, the UEFA calendar and the FIFA calendar did dictate a number of weeks throughout the season for international fixturings. And those that weren't involved in either a Euro qualifier or a World Cup qualifier, when talking about European football, did have international friendlies scheduled to make up the difference because they did have to play international games in those windows. So, in reality, the Nations League, as piss poor a competition as it is, all it has done is literally get rid of the unstructured ad hoc friendlies that were cropping up and being played anyway and replace them with a, I suppose, diluted version of international tournaments. That being said, given the lack of love for international football during a season, when you look at competition, the World Cup, it's very much an elitist competition in terms of there's a finite amount of teams that at the end of the season will be thinking, right, lads, we've managed to avoid injuries to our major players. We've managed to get our team prepared well, and we can go on and possibly win this World Cup. There's a lot of teams like the likes of my country, the Republic of Ireland. The most we can hope for really is the participation trophy for qualifying. Maybe get a scalp or two along the road, possibly make a knockout round if fortune favoured the brave. But in reality, when you go up against the behemoths of international football, 90% of international teams are also Rans. They're the nags in the race. And is it becoming increasingly disheartening for those clubs? Because in reality, obviously, we love to be there. The fans love to be part of a major carnival atmosphere that is the World Cup. But is a World Cup B in order for teams that are really not at that level? Ross.
Yeah, look, the World Cup will always be special. And I think the Nations League is just putting a little bit of a damper on it. I, for one, love the ad hoc friendlies. You know, there's only so many times I can watch England versus Italy or England versus Germany. Those are special games that you want to see at World Cups. And that's how it's always been. The World Cup is an amazing, amazing experience for players from countries or lower ranked countries. You know, you look at the likes of Australia coming in, Wales have come in there as well, and players like that play for those countries never think that they're going to make it to the World Cup. But it's amazing that they're going to be there and be participating. So, with that being said, I don't think anything would take the magic away from the World Cup, only if they make it every 2 years. I think that's the only thing that could be detrimental to it. But besides that, I still look forward to the World Cup. Not so much this year because of the timing of it, but I still love it.
Colm, obviously I'm going to come at you with a two-pronged attack here in terms of international football. International tournaments are slowly being expanded and expanded and expanded, and possibly diluting what was seen as the creme de la creme of the football tournament internationally, and making it a bit more ordinary and less exciting until knockout phase of said tournament does transpire. But how significant for players at this point is it to get that phone call from the international manager, from a big Jack Charlton, for example, back in the days of when Ireland were successful? Right, son, you're going to put on the green jersey. You're going to the World Cup. We put our faith in you. And we want you on the plane. Are a lot of young players now kind of going, well, actually, I'd rather not get injured in international football. I'm looking to get a €300,000 per week contract from Man City by staying fit, by doing what I need to do during my contracted employed games, because frankly, I ain't getting paid to go on a plane to wherever these international games are on.
So, for me, I think any footballer, whether they're from, New Zealand, South Africa, Jamaica, England, Italy, Germany, wherever they're from, as soon as they become a professional football player, their idea is to play for their country. It's the most pride you can get as a football player is to wear your shirt and perform for your country. I think, in a way, players are kind of looking at it going, okay, right, I don't really want to be selected, not for the World Cups or the Euros. Let's just get that straight, because every player wants to be playing for their country in those domestic, in those World Cup and the Euros, for instance. But for this, like I said, this silly little league that's going off that they've decided to throw in, I don't think players are as bothered. I really don't. And I mean, I don't think some of them have an option. I don't think, if we was to ask Harry Kane if he wants to stay fit and play for all season for Tottenham Hotspur and be guaranteed to play in the World Cup for England, or take that risk that you're going to pick up a knock in these stupid little games that you've decided to put on in UEFA Nations League and then possibly miss out on a period of the season and the World Cup, depending on how bad the injury is, do you think he's going to want to go? No, of course he's not going to want to go, because he doesn't want to lose out that chance.
Absolutely. And interestingly, I think that a lot of players, and I think maybe this could be an issue with international football at the moment, changing international allegiance, because no, don't get me wrong, the case of Declan Rice and Jack Grealish is completely separate. They were Englishmen that were in the Irish Academy and decided that when they were old enough to make a decision that they wanted to play for their birth nation. So that's grand. But what we did see a lot of in the past was players that weren't good enough to make their country were then kind of going, okay, let's use the granny rule here. Ireland aren't as good. I have a chance here to get in some international football, boost my profile, and kind of garner a pat for myself. But has it diluted the significance of getting that jersey? Because you there, Colin, could be sitting there as a promising young English lad with Irish grandparents. I could be sitting here doing my thing in the domestic scene. But even though, comparably speaking, we might be similar in talent, because you're playing in England, you're going to get the nod from an international manager that is, in theory, your second choice over a player like me who's still trying to basically get my way to playing for a club team in England while playing for my country.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the squad that's been given out for England, it perfectly sums up. There's obviously Harry Maguire has been selected for the England squad, which I don't agree with at all. He's not really been playing. Sorry, Monday. I know I'm upsetting you right now, but he's not really been playing. But who's the young lad? He's playing in Italy, Serie A. Tomori had a fantastic season last season. He's carried on doing it this season. Why has he not been selected? Oh, because he's playing in Italy. That's exactly what it is.
No, actually, Ross, I'm not sure if you're a rugby fan, but obviously this scenario that Cullum is actually outlining is very prevalent amongst the major rugby nations. If you're not at home, you do not get selected for your international team.
Yes.
But they do have very clear windows that they allow those players to go out, take a year contract, a 2-year contract in your French leagues, your English leagues,
and come back
and be there in plenty time to get their major tournament jersey. And even in test match scenarios, they don't seem too upset with not selecting them when it's outside of the major tournaments. But there is a cut-off point. If you're not back in New Zealand by that time, if you're not back in South Africa by that time, you will not be travelling to World Cup. Pure
Yeah.
as in the day, line drawn in the sand. But from a club perspective, how many clubs really want to engage with the matter of international football anymore? Obviously, this season is a bit of a freak, and that World Cup is in November/December.
Yeah.
But on a regular basis in Premier League, for many, many years, we've had the question of the African Cup of Nations. Now, there's obviously a reason why it's played at the time of the year that it's played. So, notwithstanding that fact, I think the one thing that seemed to get into people's head was, okay, this thing is played every 2 years instead of every 4 years. Why is this the only major international tournament with a 2-year cycle? And the impact that that has on the major teams taking a chance on the likes of a Salah or the Salah to be and giving them a shot in their lineup because they're kind of going, oh, I might be without him for a month. He might get injured while over there, and my season is up the crapper.
Yeah. And I'll tell you exactly why that's the case. And it's been the case since its inception. I might be wrong. It might have changed from 3 years to 2 years, but it's been quite close to each other. You think about how in Europe you guys have got the Nations League, plus you've got Euros that you're running, and that's all European exclusive. And we can't deny the quality of European football compared to the rest of the world is far superior. It's far superior technically, physically, and just tactically in general. Now, within African football and CAF, which is the organization that runs the African football, they're trying to promote developments within Africa. And the only way they can do that is by giving players experience on a competitive stage, playing against each other. So CAF has been very beneficial for countries like Nigeria, because a lot of the players from Nigeria start out in their domestic leagues and then eventually go over to France or wherever else. You talk about likes of Nigeria, Egypt, Ghana, and even South Africa in some cases as well. And it exposes these players to quality football because of most African players that do come from Europe or the European clubs bring those skills and that mindset back home, and they put on display for the African audiences. And it's amazing for us. I mean, we get to enjoy quality football, and you'll see that there's always a huge mismatch of skills. I mean, we watched the AFCON last year, and you could see that there was some crazy results happening, from high-scoring matches to outrageous pieces of skills and goals scored. And that just goes to show how unevenly matched players and countries are compared to Europe, where the European countries are grinding out close results. So the AFCON has been very beneficial with that, to bring other countries slowly up towards the same playing field and of skill and quality. I understand that it can cause a bit of a headache and an inconvenience to the European leagues. I understand that because I enjoy watching the Premier League and all other leagues with the teams in full strength. But in order to facilitate inclusive growth for everybody, the AFCON going down this route seems to be the best option for us.
Thanks very much, Ross. Now, Colm, I'm going to come to you with some of these comments before we get on to our analysis of Game Week 8, because we have dominated the show with the topics of the EFL Cup, the proposed restructures to English football in the Premier League, and what it would mean in terms of cup competition domestically, and of course this international football debate. But I'm going to start you off with some comments there from Ian. Do you want to take them? I have a few of them starred there for you, Colm.
Yep, so Ian here is saying that the National League is pure greed and will damage league and international football by burning players out and creating more injuries. That's basically going on what I was saying in regards to the injuries as well. He's got a couple in here. Adding more teams to the World Cup and Euros will also damage the game. See, I don't agree with that personally at all. I don't see why we can't add a few more teams into them at all. Ross, I can see you're shaking your head there as well. A possible solution is to segregate those no-hope teams like Luxembourg, Malta, Gibraltar, etc., have them play in a different competition, allow more games between the top countries. I don't see what that benefits. I understand, obviously, things are going to be a bit easier for those teams, but they want to play against the elite teams, surely. That's why they enter these competitions.
You know what? Just to interject before we move on very quickly. I've got a couple mates that stay in Gibraltar, and when they hosted Norway, it might have been I think it was the World Cup qualifiers. They hosted a lot of countries that came to Gibraltar. Holland or Netherlands was there. Norway was there. There was a couple other countries as well within their group. And my friends were so excited to see the quality firsthand of Haaland, Memphis Depay with the Netherlands, and all those other players. So having top countries like that go to small countries like your Gibraltars, your Maltas, it's huge. It's huge for the fans and it's huge for the country as well, because as I pointed back with AFCON, it almost brings up that level of skill and experience with high quality players.
Yeah, I do agree. Princess of Maine, England are going to win the World Cup. We shall see. Also, I love watching Euros and World Cup, but qualifiers can get a little bit boring. Yes, they can. On Monday, how you doing, buddy? Lack of top-class English managers like Brian Clough, who won 2 in a row. We just struggle to transfer that to the international game. We've been seeing that a lot, in all fairness. Footmoss, how you doing, mate? You're saying Canada, USA, and Mexico, more nations allowed in 2026. And Monday is back saying, look at the great UK players in English clubs winning the European Cup from 1977 to 1984. That was a credit to the UK game. That's a little bit before my time. UK Strange saying, everything is about money now, and it's killing our beautiful game. Fans can't even do anything about the greed at the top of UEFA and FIFA. Gavin Ward, international football should be seen as the highest possible level and should be above domestic. I agree with Colm, though. NL and friendlies should be cancelled. That's National League. Absolutely pointless. I agree with him. Monday is back again saying players are prize fighters. They fight for their wage, losing pride in playing it for their nation. Footmoss, keep Odegaard healthy, Norway, or else. So he's an Arsenal fan, so I can see why he's saying that. And when he's back again saying club footy has been endorsed massively. People in England are losing association of that patriotism to our international sides. Too many meaningless games, e.g. look at England's group. Exactly that. Just 2 more for you here. We got Kalo or HD Gamer. I genuinely don't get why the championship gets cancelled when like 90% of championship players don't even get picked, especially for England. But a lot of them do get picked for some of the smaller international teams. I know when a few Doncaster Rovers players, when we were in League One and the championship, actually got called up for like Senegal and teams like that. So. And the last one from me is a Monday again. I think the negative reaction is due to the stupid Nations Cup. It's whack and useless. It will end up with San Marino winning it soon due to the lack of effort from the Giants.
Now, I'm going to throw one last proverbial span in the works because we are moving deep into our lot of time because Sola will turn off the ESB if we don't move along. But given that obviously international managers only see their group of players in a finite amount of times together as a unit, is there a logic then that they will want these games to be happening in order to get an opportunity to gather the players together, see who gels together? Because just because you might be the most talented player for an international setup doesn't mean that you function the best in the team structure. And without these stupid games, to coin a Monday's phrase, that they are done a disservice and forced to kind of go in blind to these major tournaments and these major qualifying tournaments.
See, I don't think it'll make a difference because if they're getting rid of all these stupid games and these friendlies and everything, every team's going to be on the same boat anyway. Because nobody's going to have had time to work with the teams. So it's not going to change any. It's not, for me, it's not going to change anything from what it's doing now, having the games in.
I think, given that we are hitting the 50-minute mark and there's still 8 wonderful people with us enjoying the conversation and expressing their views on all the topics, it is time to move on to Matters Fantasy Football. We will not be doing the Game Week 9 preview this week. We will be holding that to ransom for next week's show, and we probably will be covering some element of the international games as well, because they would be undertaken during that time frame. But we're going to hit you with some stats first. So Game Week 8, 660,123 wildcards were in play last week, and this has been cited as the reason why price fluctuations were so inaccurate, because there were so many ins and outs taking place that the system couldn't categorically define the position of a player in a given week. So it took multiple days for them to say, without doubt, that there was the level of increase required. Next, top 50 managers had played 92 chips so far, 25 bench boosts, 19 free hits, 33 triple captains, 15 wildcards. 18 chips were played during the last game week. Excluding wildcards, only 6 of the top 50 managers have not played a chip. 2 have played all their chips and 5 have played no chips at all. So I think it's fair to say, looking at those numbers, that the majority of that top 50 won't be top 50 come end of season. I will come to your thoughts shortly, but I'm going to blitz through these stats before we move on to the conversation at large. 35 out of the top 50 managers have gone for either Haaland as captain, Kane as captain, Mitrovic as captain, Isco as captain, Tony or Jesus. And obviously one of them listened to the Reverend Battime with Vaughan when he delved into his crystal ball and said, "Thou shalt covet this Heung-min Son and place the triple captain upon him." And I thought we were going to be coming on here absolutely laughing in his face when Son starts on the bench. But Son, of course, came on and finally did Son things and scored a hat-trick. And finally then, the last stat, last week's captaincies, I'm not going to read them out, they're the percentages amongst the top 10,000 managers in FPL. But Ross and Cullum, are you now genuflecting at the church of Battime with Vaughan and proclaiming homage unto his name?
Yeah, I'm annoyed. I'm very annoyed right now. I spoke to a good friend of mine and I specifically asked him, because I was going to bring in a Spurs asset. So I asked him, who is better for this game, Kulevetsky or Son? He point blank told me Kulevetsky. I brought him in. After the game week had finished, I went to his team. He had Son. I was done. He stitched me up. So I'm a bit annoyed, but fair play to Vaughan.
Miriam, do you know what you need to say to him? I know you lie. Your lips are moving. But Colm, a rather strange week in fantasy football, and I think the viewers will be delighted to know that you're finally progressing up Mount Everest that is the Fantasy Football League and making forward progress. Has the wildcard been a positive for you in the game week 8, 7, 8 kind of scenario?
It was a massive positive for me. I mean, I'll go through. I can quickly say, where some of my points came from. So I've kept Haaland in my team. He's got me points. He was my captain. I brought De Bruyne in. Great little thing for me. He got me points. I brought Kane in. He's got me points. Cancelo got me points. Gabriel got me points. So I finished off at 58 points at the end of this week. So me playing my wild card was amazing. Personally for me, because I had quite a lot of players from, Liverpool, United, these teams that weren't playing. Yes, I am. I can see that comment from HD Gamer that I am still behind him. However, I just want to bring a little bit of attention to a certain 2 people. One of them is Solo, as I am currently 18 points behind Solo. And the other one is our very own Ross. I am only 20 points behind him now.
Ross,
So I'm
Nice.
gonna get your britches on, Ross. You're gonna have to start running. Like he's reeling you in.
Yeah, I made some poor decisions this game week. I looked at differentials and I had the opportunity to bring in De Bruyne a straight swap for Salah, and I didn't. And I'm kicking myself for that at the moment.
Gavin Ward, I noticed saying that he doesn't want Pope bad time with Vaughan the second to have his head inflate any more than it currently is. Ola Conley, a resident Liverpool fan, very welcome. He said, I triggered me wild card. I had 8 players out, but I did get a 67-point return. Now, that is a lovely little return, Ole, and I presume that team is leaving you well stocked post-international break to make a chart up until World Cup. But in terms of the game week at large, ladies and gentlemen, any players that for you just did not cut the mustard?
Dinkle and mustard.
Yeah, I got one. Leon Bailey. I took a punt on him again. I kept him in because Villa's fortunes are turning, but his form is not. So I'm a bit annoyed with that as well. Look at this. You can see my decisions. They're unraveling themselves. So yeah, I'm quite frustrated with that. But I think there's going to be some really hard decisions that all of us managers are going to have to make after the international break. And this is what's going to be very, very interesting and could actually be the turning point for most of us in our leagues. Is because of how many assets are doing so well in the same positions. Now it's all about choosing who you're going to side with, who you're placing the confidence with. And that could be the points in which you can either rush up onto the leagues or drop down.
Absolutely. I'm going to hit you with a few more stats now. Obviously, Hunming Son ruled the roost in terms of most points. The team of the week in terms of points was Begovic, 9 points. Salibia, who's turning out to be a little fantasy football gem for Arsenal, 15 points. Tyrone, I don't know how he's a defender. Mings with 9 points. Cancelo with 9 points. Then we had a Spurs double up of Son and Bentancur. Reed chipped in with 10. Ramsey chipped in with 10. And Fabio Vieira chipped in with 10. And Kane and who would have thought it, Mopai are the highest scoring forwards. In terms of a stats watch, Mitrovic is becoming an increasingly popular target from game week 8 wildcarders and could reach the dizzying height of £7 million asset value come next week. Erling Haaland still the most owned player across fantasy football land. The most shots in game week 8 was down to Jimmy Madison, now at 7.9 million. His 7 shots were comfortably the highest in league, with 3 hitting on target behind only Hunming Son, who Madison is in about 5.5% of teams and has an enticing fixture run, including Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth coming up. And that is despite Leicester's poor run of form. Teammates Yuri Tielemans scored a penalty, and Jamie Vardy was off the pitch, has been showing signs of creativity. Now, we did discuss Mr. Jamie Vardy on yesterday's show with Colm. So if you do have any thoughts on the Premier League review from last week, do put them in the comments and we will be very happy to engage with that. Elsewhere, Alexander Isk showed promising signs again. The Newcastle shot count does really make a Newcastle attacking asset a rather enticing affair. And would you believe it? He's only owned by 8.1% of managers at this present time. So Isk is a massive differential. And then that is mainly the main stats as I see it. Obviously Kevin De Bruyne again, double assist. He everywhere he goes, he nearly gets an assist at this point. As much as Haaland, it scores goals and making a mockery of the scoring charts. But I'm going to come to you briefly with your thoughts on your performance for game week 8. Ross, what chips have you used to date? Or are any of them gone astray on you?
Chips, yeah, sweet and sour. No. I've used my wild card. It was beneficial to me. I used it a couple game weeks ago where I had some key players of mine not performing and injured, and I wasn't prepared to take a hit of minus 12, 16 points so early in my season. And I used it knowing that we were going to get it back anyway after the World Cup. So it was very, very helpful in that sense to know that I'm going to get it back, and I'm going to hold onto any of my chips or my remaining chips until the new year. For me, I always look at double game weeks. That's just my personal view on it because statistically, there's just a higher chance of your players getting better points. So they'll go for my bench boost and my triple captain. I'll be saving those for double game weeks.
Thank you, Ross. And it's the rather short Q&A from the viewers today. Colm, I'm going to let you take this one from Anthony Herbert if you don't mind.
Yeah, so Anthony's asking, you picked your players for Saturday's games. If you've got players in your team that are playing the next day on a Sunday, when is it best to change your players? I mean, I don't know whether the other guys are going to have a different view for this. To me, it's all a case of when you feel it's the best time. It's as simple as that for me.
I think,
Change your subs when you can do, unless I'm misreading this somehow.
I think just in case there's any confusion, what I'm reading from this is he's wondering can he make in-play changes, and that of course is not the case. There is a deadlock time, and on your head be it after that time. You're then hoping that a player doesn't play if you have a haul on your bench, essentially.
Yeah.
Gavin Ward is saying he's glad he left Salibia in his team. The man can do no wrong. And Kalo wants a top 20. Now, if you get top 20 overall, I think Ross will fly over from South Africa, wash your feet, and genuflect in front of you. Because that would be quite the feat. But all jokes aside, gentlemen, it has been a wonderful conversation today. We covered a lot of ground. It has been a rather shorter version of the fantasy football analysis, but I think given the scale of topics that were there to be discussed, it was important to do so. We have been broadcasting on the Man United agenda as well today, so there will be a full scale of programming coming up there, 8:30 every day essentially. But Colm, as the curator of matters broadcasting on FTSN, is there any shows that you know are slated and in the books that people can look forward to?
Yes, if you are an NFL fan, I know it's going to be quite late. 1:30 in the morning, the NFL guys will be going live over on our channel. Also, tomorrow, I believe, Ollie is doing his Mullet show, which is a comedy football show. It's really funny. Make sure you go and check him out as well. And we are bringing you a new show. Date to be confirmed, but I think it is starting this weekend due to the international break. And that is the Lone Rangers that Bobby is going to be presenting.
Excellent. And for us, we do it every week, but let's do it again this week. Where, other than watching us here live on Tuesday nights, can you be found?
You can find me on my only Instagram page, which is @_Rose_.
And absolutely. And of course, he will be back to discuss matters fantasy football. Colm is cheating on us next week and not going to be present. So we will make sure to save all our nasty comments about his fantasy football efforts for that show. And I'm sure he's currently filing away every insult so that at the end of the season, when he's standing above us, kind of going, "You doubt me. Now, what? Say my name now." But lads, thanks very much for joining me. I enjoyed the topics today. But from us, it's time to sign out. I'm not sure on Monday, actually, as I spot you, are you doing an eye test tonight? If so, be sure to check out his deep his tactical analysis. He will be joined by the ever swelling head of Bat Time with Vaughan. But from us, good night, God bless, safe home.